Hey guys, this is TV Siblings Podcast for Mr. Robot. This is Sid.
This is Sweta.
And this is Harini.
Sweta is a little bit under the weather today, unfortunately, so
I got the black lung pops.
yeah, that's what she has. So yeah, we're going over episode 2 of the final season of Mr. Robot called I think it's called Payment Authorized?
Payment Required.
Payment Required. Dude, this is a crazy episode, especially the ending. I don't know if we want to jump right into that just yet. Maybe we'll go through like the recap, but wow, great episode.
Yeah, we can do first thoughts, I think, just briefly.
Sure. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that was something we've always joked about how Elliot might have a third persona. But I was like, it's kind of too late in the season to introduce something like that. So I was like, what's happening? This is crazy. I had initial thought that initially when they said that, I was like, there's no way there's another person. But I guess there is.
Yeah, it's funny. I was telling this to Swetha. Sam Esmail did an interview with the Hollywood Reporter saying he's been planning this since the beginning, and that there are actually details throughout all the seasons showing this, proving this is true. And I was also telling this to Swetha, at the end of season 2 or 3, we talked about how Sam Esmail said there's like a theory or detail that people keep missing. And, we talked about, is it something with the brownouts and the blackouts? Is there something there that we're missing? But he says clearly this. No one has ever talked about how there might be another person who could take over Elliot, or another personality besides Elliot and Mr. Robot. And he said he hasn't seen anyone theorize on that. And so when he says something like that, my first thought is we had all these theories about, is Wellick actually dead? And he's actually another personality that was created. And that clearly kills that idea for Sam Esmail saying no one has gotten it right.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, as in like, well, it cannot be that third person.
Exactly.
Okay, so just to get right into it. So the intro scene of this episode is essentially a voiceover of Philip Price narrating how White Rose, or Mr. Zhang as we know him, came to be, his rise to power, him just kind of making the right political and power moves to create this conglomerate or creation of Deus Group, which is an investment group. Essentially, what you think of it as is the most important people in the world, most powerful, wealthiest people in the same room working together for a single purpose, as they realize under White Rose, or Mr. Zhang, for the sole purpose of his pet project, which is this $1 billion project, as Philip Price says, that he's trying to ship right now, as we see in this season, to the Congo still?
Yeah, still to the Congo.
To the Congo, yeah. And so that's the first scene. And as we realize, it leads right into the next scene. He is, I'm assuming, explaining all of this to Elliot, and then kind of going over the Washington Township plan and how that all came to be. And he essentially tells Elliot, when looking at his whole laid out map of White Rose, you can't take down this guy, man. Like, your efforts are going to be futile. They are impenetrable. But Elliot is not deterred at all. He's like, we can do this. You are very much in the inside circle. If you help me, we can take him down.
So one of the questions I had when Philip Price was laying everything out is, why do you think the Deus Group was so supportive of White Rose's efforts? Clearly, Philip Price does not believe in White Rose's project. And do you think everyone else on the Deus Group is more supportive, or where do you think they lie?
Well, Philip Price talks about that. He says, and I think it's a very interesting thing. It's actually a question I wanted to ask you guys. He talks about how he had this pet project, that he kept working towards it, and he uses this quote saying, we all belittled him for this project and belittled this project. So that clearly was like, yeah, we don't take this project seriously. But eventually he talks about how they slowly realized everything was building towards that project, and everything they do is in service of Zhang and this project.
And I think it really feeds back to exactly what White Rose has always been. He is really good at convincing people to to work towards something that's beyond themselves, but telling them exactly what they want to hear to further his own interests on his behalf. And this is essentially just like a long con that White Rose has been playing on all of these people, all the most powerful people in the world. It's pretty crazy.
And so, yeah, that was my question to you guys. Is there anything we can glean from that phrase when he says we belittled his project? Is there anything we can take from that? Because it sounds like they were fully aware of what this project was. They just thought it was so incredulous and outside of the realm of possibilities that's like, what's the point of even pursuing this? I just want to try to grasp at any morsel we can get of what his project is about.
It seems to me that Price has probably seen this project and it does work. And I think that's the kind of tone I'm taking from that when he says they belittled it. They didn't think it was real or that it was a big deal or that it would even work. But it actually is working. It is happening. That's kind of what I gained from that.
But nothing beyond like what it could be.
Yeah, we're super in the dark about that still. And I wonder when. I hope it's not like a last episode type of thing where we find out what it is. What do you think that they would do that to us, or do you think we'd find out sooner?
I think we might find out sooner. The only phrase that he attributed towards what it was White Rose's machine that he was building.
I think that lends credence to a lot of people's thoughts that it could be like a power plant, kind of like what is it called in Chernobyl? Like a nuclear power plant of some sort.
But that's what the Washington Township power plant is.
I see.
That's very kind of what it is on the surface level. But what it's powering, we don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I kind of never understood, or we never got a lot of information on the Washington Township plant ever. We just hear it in passing. We just know like Elliot's dad and Angela's mom died from whatever was going on there. But I personally never felt like a strong connection to it because they never explained it fully. And I feel like it was only like in this episode with Price that he kind of mentioned it. Did you guys feel the same way like throughout the course of the series?
I think so a little bit. And I was telling this to Swetha in our preview for season 4. I feel very strongly that we are going to get a flashback scene with Elliot's dad and Angela's mom working on the project. Maybe as serving as a way of explaining what the project's about. And we will probably see a young BD Wong, a young Zhang interacting with them, maybe in some capacity.
Yeah. And the only reason why I say that is because this is essentially the whole reason and the basis of the show is because Angela's mom and Elliot's dad were killed from this plant. This is why they want to take all these people down. So it would be... I would personally like to see, like you said, maybe a flashback of some sort to give more background and foundation to that.
And it's always been strange to me that Angela's mom and Elliot's dad, to an extent, were almost completely fine with them being sick and dying. Almost as if they knew this was a consequence of whatever they were working on. I don't think it was a monetary thing, because I know they got some kind of financial compensation, but I think they almost were like, this was a risk we knew we were going to take by participating in this.
I don't know, though, because the tiny bit of information that we do get is back in season 2 or 3, White Rose is talking to Grant, and she's explaining that Elliot's dad worked on this project unknowingly. I'm pretty sure she says the words unknowingly. And Elliot's going to finish it. And so she was kind of looking at, the poetry of it all. Like the father was working on it, now the son's working on it. And then she says in that same scene, just like the father gave his life, like Elliot's going to give his life for this too.
I have a feeling though, because Elliot's dad was super smart. I have a feeling maybe on the surface, he may have gave the look that, or gave off the perception that he didn't know what was happening. But I bet he knew.
I don't think he was okay with dying, though. I don't think he accepts that what he was working on was so noble that it was worth dying for. I don't think so.
I think he did, because otherwise, why not reveal what happened? Why not really go after E-Corp?
Well, so
He chose not to do any of that.
this is the thing, though. I think this is what creates this personality inside of Elliot, this anger and this need for revenge and this need for justice that he thinks his father never got. And we see flashbacks of, his mom always yelling at his dad, you're worthless, you don't do anything, blah, 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 blah. And so I think that's how Elliot viewed his dad.
No, that's fine. I get that. That's how that personality was created. He wished his father had fought back. What I'm saying is, I think there must have been a reason why his father did not fight back.
I think on the flip side, there might be an element of both of them, like Angela's mom and Elliot's dad, knowing what the project was. And if it is in line with what Angela felt it was, then it might be a project where they are able to come back in some form or some way, and it doesn't matter if they die. And I think that lends a lot of, it makes sense and is in line with all the people in the Dark Army. They're so willing and ready to kill themselves. And why is that? Is it just because they believe in the cause so much, or is it because they believe in the project and know that they will be able to come back in some capacity, whatever that means to them?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, that could be entirely true as well.
I think that's very interesting, or that makes sense, especially with Angela's mom, with her having that whole party, which was very, kind of morbid. And it's like, why are you doing this? She seemed very okay with the situation. That could be for many reasons, but I think that might make sense.
Right.
Okay, so moving on, we talked about Price and Elliot, but what is interesting is in the course of that conversation, Elliot keeps prodding him. He's like, no, there must be a way I can figure it out. He's like, there must be someone on the inside that has access to all the transactions or the money, financial accounts. And Price says, yes, it's Susan Jacobs, who we know as the financial advisor or the head, or CFO, I believe, of eCorp, who, as we know, in season 2, I believe, right? It was in season 2 that Darlene and F Society, whoever was with her, ends up killing Susan Jacobs and covers it up. And I don't realize until this point that Elliot doesn't actually know about that. I forgot that he was in jail and he wasn't aware of that whole situation. So that's an interesting factor because he sees that as a sign of hope that he can find out where she is. But Price does tell him the caveat that she's been missing for a long time now. No one knows where she is. And he also Elliot tells Price, we need to have a meeting of all the members. This is the only way that this is going to work. We need everyone in one place in person in the next 8 days. And Price just looks at him like, are you serious? That's not going to happen. That's such a tall order. It's just not happening. And Elliot, or Mr. Robot rather, pipes in and says, you have shown your loyalty to White Rose. Use that in your favor to make him do this. Yeah. And that kind of gets through to Price, but not in the way that we see it. He kind of thinks on that, but then he leaves. Well, I will say is I'm kind of getting confused on the two different personas between Mr. Robot and Elliot, because we see Price face Elliot and comment to him or talk to him, and then before leaving the room he talks directly to Mr. Robot. So I'm like, what's happening here? I don't really understand. They've never done that before until this season.
Yeah, well, we saw it once before, kind of, when Mr. Robot was talking to Cisco and Darlene, and Elliot was in the bathroom, and he was like, what the hell's going on? But to be so seamless like this, I think maybe this is supposed to be Sam Esmail communicating to us that they're kind of merged now, and they can go in between each other very easily.
And I think Philip Price is insightful enough to know and recognize the two distinct personalities.
Wait, what? What?
You think so?
You think he doesn't know?
No, I think I think that's Elliot altering the situation for us. He's not physically going and talking to two different people.
Yeah, so that's what I was getting confused about. I was like, is he actually going there and talking to him? I was getting confused.
No, I think that's Elliot, just kind of him, how he changes the environment.
I see.
I think, yeah. There's no way that Philip Price knows that there's two of them.
And I don't know. That's how I interpreted that scene.
How could he possibly know where Mr. Robot is? There's only one Elliot in the room.
I think it was just a visual representation of him recognizing the two personalities. But I don't know. I don't think we haven't seen any conclusive evidence that Philip Price knows that Elliot has a split personality. But I think he might have an inkling.
Potentially, yeah.
Maybe. I think that was more of a stylistic thing. But maybe.
One thing we haven't talked about yet is, was it just, I don't know, like I'm still trying to figure out the end of episode 1, where Philip Price is the one to come out and, you know, basically rescue Elliot in a certain way. But what was that all about? Because it didn't seem like Philip Price had much of a plan at all.
Yeah, it kind of seemed like a whole show for nothing. Unless it was a facade or just kind of like keeping up appearances in case White Rose was watching, you know? Because he did kind of explain in this beginning scene that you're lucky I am the one that's like in charge of kind of watching you or whatever it might be, whoever is like trying to interfere with his plan. And you're lucky I was the one that found you. And
yeah, so what do you think he means by that? Like, you're lucky... How so? Because
like someone else didn't find him. You know what I mean? Like it's he's lucky that it wasn't another member of White Rose's like crew, like Dark Army. Yeah. That it was Philip Price was the one that was like watching, having eyes on him in that moment and got there first. As I think that's all that really means. But I agree with you, Sweta. It kind of seems like a lot of like for show to just like go kill him and then like potentially overdose him and bring him back to life or what? Just to tell him a whole story about how White Rose came to power. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah, because if he really wanted to be merciful, he just wouldn't have put Elliot through all of that.
Right, I agree with
you. But
you.
then if he really wanted to prove a point, what was the point he was trying to prove? Like,
I do think in a way, because clearly Elliot brings him back to Allsafe. It kind of shows him what he's been working on. And I think Price wanted to bring him back and see what he's been up to, if he has a plan, because it does seem like Price is desperate. He's pretty desperate if he's going to Elliot to see what he's been up to, because he's clearly devastated at wit's end with this whole White Rose situation. And I think he sees what Elliot has in mind and kind of loses hope and is like, never mind, you know. But then Elliot kind of like pulls him back in and is like, no, we can do this. And he kind of ruminates on that as we see as he leaves. That's kind of what I got from it.
I think that Philip Price was just acting out his orders. Anyone who shows up there, go and track them down, he finds out who it is, enacts a plan to put Elliot in his place according to Dark Army's terms. And then after that, I think he just had curiosity. Like, why were you even there? How did you find this guy's name? And that probably led to Elliot saying, let me show you.
So was it Philip Price's decision to bring him back? Is that why he's so lucky?
I think you're getting so hung up on that. I think that's just purely Dark Army yanking the line on Elliot. He's bait. It's like, oh, we can kill you and we can bring you back. We own you. I think that's all that entire exercise was.
Okay.
On the flip side, though, I wouldn't be surprised if none of that was real outside of Philip Price showing up.
Really?
I would not be surprised if Elliot went to the room, got nothing, realized it was a honeypot, realized they probably have alerted Dark Army, whoever, to what they're doing, and maybe he accidentally overdosed on his own. And then Philip Price shows up and says, welcome back, Mr. Elliot, as he sees him comes back. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't trust anything at this point with what we're seeing.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to see. But as Price leaves, or during the conversation, Darlene calls once. And then once Price leaves, Darlene calls again, to which Elliot picks up. And Darlene tells Elliot, Mom's dead. And so the next scene, they're at the nursing home where their mom has been staying this whole time. And her possessions, her whatever limited possessions she has is there in the room. And the nurse at the nursing home essentially is like, yeah, if there's stuff you want to donate, here's some Post-its, put it on there. And they essentially are just like, let's get rid of everything. We don't want any of it. And you see Elliot just kind of like in a rush trying to get everything out of the way. He's like, let's just get this done. I don't want to think about it. He's not processing anything, just like with Angela. He just wants to move on and like focus on his plan to take down White Rose, which of course Darlene is not aware of. What they do find, which is interesting, is Elliot's old Walkman, which you can see Elliot's kind of like there is some sentimental value. He's curious why his mom even had that in the first place, and he wants to hold on to it, but he also doesn't want to show Darlene that kind of emotion, so he throws it in the giveaway box. To which Darlene picks it up again. He's like, no, like I want it. Like cassettes are in nowadays, and then she brings it back. Anything to say on that scene? Oh, and I forgot to mention, Darlene is going through the mom stuff and sees that she has a safety deposit box, which they never knew about. She's like, I want to know what's in this. And that's kind of the wrap up of the scene.
Just a quick comment. Darlene's such a riot, man. Like, she's like, she finds some like random jack. It's like, oh, nice. This is for me. Gets excited about the Walkman, cassette, the cigarettes. Like, every scene she's in, she's just like, she doesn't care who's in. She doesn't care where she is, what environment. If she has something to say or something to do, or she's going to act on it. If she's going to yell at Elliot in a subway in front of everyone. If she's going to yell at Elliot or in a bank. She's just going to fucking do it. That's just Darlene. She does not care about niceties of society. I love that about her.
And the best part is their dynamic too. When Elliot just kind of has to like stand there, like in public, just like, all right, this happened.
yeah, exactly.
It's great.
So the nurse, I thought was interesting when she was describing the mother. She was very emotional. She was crying. She was saying, your mother was a saint. She was a great shoulder. She gave me a great shoulder to cry on when my father died.
Mm-hmm.
You guys must be so sad. And this does not line up at all with everything we know about Elliot's mom. And yes, can we trust Elliot's memories and Elliot as a narrator? No. But who can we trust? Darlene. Darlene has been proven to be the person who kind of writes Elliot's memories. She's acting as Elliot's memories and making sure that he understands what's happened in the past. If he cannot remember it. And she has been consistent saying she was a terrible, terrible person. So for this person to say this, that strikes me as very, very odd. Because she was crying. I mean, this definitely is not something she's lying about and just saying for the sake of, condolences. I'm sorry you had to go through this. It wasn't bullshit. The other thing was, she said that your mother gave me a shoulder to cry on and was comforting to me. That also does not physically sound like the person we saw last season when Elliot got out of prison and went to visit his mom and to thank her for, getting him through the tough time. She didn't acknowledge his presence. I don't even know if she was blinking. She didn't talk. She looked like she was comatose. And so I think we all assumed she medically and physically could not interact, but maybe she could and chose not to. So I think those two things, small details, but I think there's something interesting about that.
Yeah, that actually didn't. I mean, I caught the whole emotional thing. I was like, that's totally not true, you know? But you're right. You're totally right. She was like almost like not in a comatose state, but very like sedentary, not like a person who's up and walking about that often. So that is a little incongruent with those two statements. I don't know. What do you think that is or what that means?
And in that moment, Elliot was really pouring his heart out. He was like, you kept me going when I was going through a really difficult time. You would think someone would be like, acknowledge that in the slightest way, but she didn't even move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Elliot had zero reaction to her having zero reaction. Almost like...
Right, like that was normal.
That's just how it is. Mm-hmm. And I think it's also strange that Elliot and Darlene just kind of brushed off what the nurse said. Yeah, whatever. Like, they didn't have any reaction. Like, what? That doesn't sound like our mom. What? She was talking? She was emotional? She had emotions? Right? Like, none of that had any impact on them. They're just like, whatever. What do we have to do to get out of this room and finish this up? So, I don't know. I'm not sure what to theorize on there. I just thought it was something worth pointing out.
Yeah, that is extremely bizarre, actually, now that you comment on that.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's really weird. We'll think on that more. But the next scene is with DDP, and this is the long-awaited statement that she has to give, the interview on Santiago. And she's being interviewed by Agent Horton. And he essentially is just asking about Santiago's behavior, any weird behaviors, anything sketchy in the last couple of weeks or so. And you can see DDP's like really sweating in this room. She's stressed, she's anxious, and that's kind of being caught on by Horton. She takes a glass of water, she thinks, you can tell like she's trying to formulate what she wants to say in her head before she says it, and it's very difficult for her to say the words that she says. But essentially she tells Agent Horton that yes, Santiago I believe he was a double agent, and this is hard for me to say about my own boss and my colleague, but I believe he was working with some dangerous people, and she names that group as the Trujillo Drug Cartel. So clearly this has been information that's been fed by the Dark Armory to her to say to the FBI about Santiago to keep them off their case. Immediately after that, DDP calls Janice, who is our favorite taxidermist, and tells her, I said what you wanted me to say. It's done. Don't need to worry about it. But that's not enough for Janice. She prods further. She's like, so what do you mean by well? And DDP doesn't know what to say. She's like, I don't know. Like, I think he bought it. She's like, you think? Like, yeah. I'm like, I don't know. I'm sure. Like 99.9% sure. And she's like, okay. And that's kind of the gist of the conversation. She's like, all right, well, we'll keep working on that type of thing.
I thought it was amazing misdirection by Sam Esmail. You're like, oh shit.
Oh, yeah.
Is DDP gonna do it?
How many times is he gonna get us, man?
Yeah.
So many times.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. And, it was almost like double misdirection.
Santiago's a double agent. I was like, oh my God, where's she going with this?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that emotion by DDP was real. That was real. Like,
yeah.
I think she wanted to say what she wanted to say, knowing that she had to say the lie. So I thought that was all real up until what she said, which is just incredible. Absolutely incredible misdirection.
I mean, at first I thought Agent Horn was a member of the Dark Army or someone that's been paid off.
Oh yeah, the obvious thing was like, she tells the truth, and then he's like, all right, now your mother's gonna die. You're like, oh shit, Dark Army too, they're everywhere. But he takes, again, Sam Esmail's like, oh, you think he's like, we're playing fucking checkers. He's playing chess, man. It's like not even close. Mm-hmm. It's not even close.
Yeah. No, it was a really, really great scene. And so next scene, we're at the funeral home now. So Elliot and Darlene are there. Darlene's trying to pick up options for their mom. He's like, I don't freaking know what she would want. If it's not a conversation I had with my mom, and like trying to justify her actions to this guy who like literally does not give a shit. And Mr. Robot
giving her very judgy eyes.
Yeah. And Darlene's just being Darlene.
Yeah.
But back in the actual like church area, Mr. Robot and Elliot are having conversation, and it's interesting seeing again Mr. Robot in this role of very concerned, very fatherly actually, and is looking to Elliot. And it's like, I need to know that you're okay. I need you to process and not hold these things in. Like essentially, I'm worried about you. And Elliot's just like, I'm fine. Like that's not my focus. My focus is one thing and one thing only, is White Rose taking him down and like saving me, saving Darlene, saving us. And he's being very stubborn. He's not to be, argued with at this point.
One comment and a question for you guys. I love the way the scene ends with...
Yes, I was just going to say.
Okay, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, no, go for it. Just like, it was super funny that because it's another thing that Mr. Robot keeps talking to us, which I kind of love.
I like it.
He's pretty funny. He's like, I agree. That could have gone better. Fuck you. So good.
And I could see like Christian Slater having a lot of fun with that. It's like, fuck yeah, man. Like I get to talk to the audience now. I get to have some fun with it. But yeah, you kind of alluded to this, Harini. I have a question for you guys. What do you guys think of, what do you make of the more empathetic and sympathetic Mr. Robot we're getting this season? So I think you mentioned, when we were talking before the podcast, that maybe it's a counter-action or counter-reaction to the more brazen and reckless version of Elliot and it's Mr. Robot trying to balance things out. Is that still like what you guys both think?
I think, yeah, Mr. Robot's always been about survival and protecting Elliot, I think, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And because Elliot's being so reckless and not thinking things through and not dealing with his emotions, I think Mr. Robot feels like he has the onus of doing that for him, kind of reeling him in and bringing him back to Earth, bringing him back to reality and constantly checking in on him because Elliot's just, pushed the extreme so much more than last season.
Yeah, it's funny because Elliot is acting how Mr. Robot acted to an extent season 1. And Mr. Robot doesn't like it. He doesn't like it, which I think is kind of ironic.
Yeah, I kind of feel slightly different, that it's almost like a dichotomy. Like they're just one thing of a tank where either one has to act rash or reckless or has like this kind of crazed personality, and one is the more rational, calm one, and they have to balance each other out. Like only one person can be that way. And right now Elliot is that way, so therefore Mr. Robot has to take on that other role. They can't both simultaneously be that crazen person. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm thinking. It
No,
has to
that
be one
makes
or the
total
other.
sense. Yeah.
Which is
That
why
makes
Mr.
total
Robot
sense.
doesn't like being that's like, I wish you would just take on that role because you're better at it. I like being the reckless one, you know? But that's just kind of how I'm thinking. So the next scene, Darlene and Elliot are in the subway. They're just kind of talking. We see Elliot is like furiously like trying to search things up on his phone about Susan Jacobs, any information he can. This was like another kind of misdirecting scene because Darlene keeps trying to get her brother's attention. She's like, Elliot, like, hello, like pay attention to me. And you see that she is looking at his phone. She even grabs his phone at one point. And I'm like, oh my God, like, is she going to say anything? Does she see it? But she doesn't give any inkling or any impression that she's actually seen what he's looking on the phone. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of like a missed opportunity. I don't know where they're going with that. But essentially in that conversation, Darlene wants Elliot to come with her to the bank to see what the safety deposit holds. And he's kind of like, why? Like, just let it go. It's not going to bring mom back or whatever it is. You're like, I just need you to come with me. Like, she opens up to him and says, I'm not doing well. Those times I was there for you. I really need you to be there for me right now. And like, even if it's just going to this bank, I just need you to be there with me. And so that's where they head off to.
Yeah. Another comment and a question. Comment. I thought it was hilarious how the scene ended with
the snowman.
The stuff. No, it was snowman standing up and saying condolences. Just like, what the fuck was that? That was hilarious. But yeah, kind of almost semi-comment question for you guys. When Darlene's telling Elliot the story about them as kids and how she would hold his hand when he thought he was having one of his episodes, and she would tell him everything is real, Elliot looks a little confused, almost like he's trying to remember that, but can't. But just kind of goes with it, like, oh, just like, I'm sure she's telling the truth.
He's so used to that now.
I think there's like a lot of things there. A, I really don't think Elliot remembers that. B, this has happened a few times, which I think we kind of were aware. Elliot seeing something that's not there and being confused about reality. Angela mentioned this before, saying when they went to the museum and he kept shouting about something that wasn't there that no one else could see. And she's like, do you remember that? And he says, I don't remember that. But this time, Darlene's saying, I'm the one who told you what's real and everything is okay. What do you guys think about all that? There's like a lot of little details that Sam Esmail gave in that short little scene.
See, the thing is, I think you were dabbling with the possibility, what if someone else took over for Elliot during those moments that he doesn't remember?
Yeah.
I think that's a possibility, but I also think that we can't forget that Elliot's mind is really messed up, and he completely forgot Darlene as a whole human being. He forgot that, they grew up together, that was his sister, and so I think he has a really damaged mind, and so we have to take that into consideration as well, where just because he doesn't remember everything doesn't necessarily mean that someone took over for all of those moments.
It could mean that someone did.
Yeah. Could be, yeah.
I wasn't saying that someone did. I was just curious what you guys thought in general.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a few possibilities.
I just realized something, just kind of thinking back about how you were saying, Siddha, that there's been lots of like hints throughout the 4 seasons now that there is a third person potentially that's been taking over Elliot's persona. And this was something that's always like a confusing point to me. And I think it was in season 3 where we had a flashback of young Elliot and his dad when they're at the movies to go see Back to the Future or some movie, I forget. And that's the moment where Elliot's dad dies. He's just like on the floor, right? And it's very morbid, and Elliot takes the popcorn and just goes in and watches the movie, and he says shh to somebody like the movie's starting. And I always was like, who the hell could he be talking to? Like, it doesn't make sense at that moment that would be his dad. just because
Yeah.
like his dad is alive at that point, so to speak. So it had to be someone else. So I feel like that's a very clear indication that there was a third person, or there was someone even before Mr. Robot.
Well, I think a lot of people think that Mr. Robot. Well, I don't know. We actually don't know when Mr. Robot was created. I think the prevalent theory is that maybe when Elliot was pushed out the window, but then I think we find out that he was seeing Mr. Robot right then, and that's why he jumped out the window.
But we don't know if it's Mr. Robot or someone else now.
It could have been someone else. Correct.
Yeah.
He saw something that caused him to jump out the window.
Yeah.
What always bothered me about that scene was that when he says shh to the person next to him in the empty seat, he's looking at the person eye level. If it was Mr. Robot
right.
as his father, he would have. And Swith, I know you don't think it's a big detail, but this is Sam Esmail. He clearly wrote in the script, "Look eye level to your left," right? He could have easily said, "Look up," and that would have signified who it was. That was someone that was older that was sitting next to Elliot. Personally, I actually think the person that he was talking to was Elliot, and that someone else had taken over Elliot's body.
Like he was talking to himself, like as a young Elliot?
Well, say like this other personality had taken over Elliot's body and was talking to,
Elliot.
the alpha Elliot personality that's now not in control.
I agree with that because he puts on the Mr. Robot jacket.
Correct. He puts on the Mr. Robot jacket.
Just walks into the movie theater like nothing just happened. And yeah, I agree with that.
And Mr. Robot is not cold enough to have no reaction to Elliot's father dying. That's just not who he is. He's a blend of Elliot, maybe more of his brazen and reckless portion of his personality, but he's not cold and dead and has no emotional reaction. That version of Elliot we've hardly ever seen, where he's just dead and has no reaction to anything.
You could take it a different way, though. You could take it whatever personality that was trying to protect Elliot from like how horrible that moment was. Like, let's just go watch the movie.
I disagree because he was acting that way right before his father died. He said some horrible things to him.
True.
Right? He says, "We're never going to be okay. I don't want to be here, and I don't want to be here with you."
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
Obviously, this is something obviously this is something we need to think about now.
Yeah.
We need to go back and think about all those scenes and find the little
Right.
details that Sam Esmail's talking about.
Definitely. So the next scene, DDP is doing an interview with her colleague and gets interrupted by another colleague saying, "Hey, I need you to come here for a second." And essentially is video footage of Agent Horton, who supposedly threw himself off his own apartment building and killed himself. And the agent that she's talking to is like, "Didn't you just see him earlier? Like, was he acting different? Was he acting weird?" And DDP is just like horrified. And she gets a text at that moment from Janice, the taxidermist, basically saying like, "Hey, like we essentially like cleared up that problem," and saying that 99.9% isn't good enough. Let's keep it to 100.
Yeah.
Just like, damn, there's just no letting up. And DDP is just like so shaken up. You can see like that she essentially got this person killed because she was 99.9% sure. It's just terrible.
Yeah, and quick comment about the previous scene. I think I was saying this to Swetha as we were watching the episode. I think that Irish guy who specializes in helping people, disappear or get away could play into something later on. It could be some way of, DDP escaping or maybe getting her mother to escape. I don't think that was a throwaway scene, personally.
I like that. And so the next scene is they're at the bank and they're waiting on the safety deposit box. This poor guy, this bank teller, whoever he is, comes and delivers the bad news that the safety deposit is gone, and they have this policy that they try to reach out to Elliot's and Darlene's mom. No response, so it's policy after 120 days that they dispose of the contents. And that's when Darlene just freaks out and just goes,
Yeah.
There's like, what the fuck? In the middle of like this very quiet bank, and the teller's like, all right, I'm gonna leave you to it now. And Ellie's just like, oh my God, can we just go home now? Like,
Yeah.
we did it, let's leave. But Darlene, you can see she's like really, really down. And like, it's in that moment you realize like it's been a shit day. It's been a shit month. Like, it's just been really bad all around for her and for Elliot. And she confronts Elliot. She's like, I don't understand like how you do it. Like with like Angela, like I don't know how to move on. I don't seem to know how to move on just yet. I wish I could. And Elliot admits to her, is like, I haven't moved on, you know. And that was like a very good and real moment between the two of them. And Elliot is very sweet and like tries to cheer her up and takes out the Walkman and is like, open it. And you see that the cassette is labeled Happy Mother's Day. And they both immediately seem to know like where that's from. And Darlene seems confused. Like, why would mom have that? It wasn't for her. And Elliot says maybe she wishes it were. And Darlene's like, I want to listen to it. I want you to listen to it with me. Elliot's like, no, I'm okay. And she starts listening to it and almost immediately gets emotional. And it's a very sweet moment where Elliot is curious and wants to like join in. And he slowly scoots over to her. And it's just brother and sister listening to them. And we hear the audio zoom in more. And it's young Elliot, young Darlene, and young Angela Moss all like chiming together, wishing Happy Mother's Day to Angela's mom. And that's kind of where the scene fades away.
Great scene. Great scene. Couple of things. This scene, out of all the scenes so far in the first 2 episodes, made me really, really miss our interaction with Elliot as, you know, the silent observer. Because after Darlene freaks out and sits down and is emotional, Elliot has like this great reaction of him like looking back, like hands standing back a little, like, seriously? I have to deal with this right now. And I played that in my head thinking that's exactly what Ellie would say. He's like, shit, she's crying. I guess I need to be the brother. You know, you could see him like turning on the empathy mode to interact with her because he really did not want to be dealing with that right now. And that kind of bummed me out because I would love to have had that conversation with Elliot to hear that. Some more important things. Do you guys think it was significant that the safety deposit box was at an E Corp bank? I asked this because initially I thought the safety deposit box was purely a writing mechanism to get them together, to work together, and to kind of like air their frustrations out. But what if there is something important in there? There has to be a reason their mother took the time to get a safety deposit box and keep something in there. And I think it has to be too much of a coincidence that it's an E Corp bank and now it's gone. I would not be surprised if it shows up later on.
Potentially, I kind of go more like the Elliot route with the honeypot situation, where it's like half of New York is owned by E Corp.
Very true.
You know, it's not going to be that much of a stretch if the mom like had a safety deposit box at an E Corp bank. But you're totally right. Like, it could be like, it seems to be out of character, as Darlene says, for their mom to do something like that. So whatever it is must have been really important for her to like save, I guess. But I'm not sure.
I just thought it was strange just because she probably thinks in her mind E Corp took her husband away from them, ruined their lives. Why would you go to a bank represented by something she hates, potentially hates? I don't know. The other thing is, I think I asked this this way before we started the podcast. How come Elliot is so certain of his memory of the Walkman and what's inside the Walkman? He clearly remembers this. He has selective memory with his past, but this one he's certain. Like, I know what it is. When he saw the Walkman, he knew exactly what was in it and what was on that tape. 2, every tape has a side A and a side B. Do you guys think there's something else on that tape on the side B?
Totally.
Something that could be very pertinent.
I think it's strange, like, why did Elliot have the tape that was intended for Angela's mom?
I mean,
I think his mom took it.
No. I think what Swetha's asking is like, why would he come to have, or like, how did he have?
Why was it in Elliot's Walkman? Maybe?
Why was it in Elliot's Walkman?
Yeah, that I don't know. Yeah.
The only thing I can think of is like his dad like worked at essentially like a Radio Shack and had access to like these types of like electronics. So maybe only Elliot had the means to like play it for them or like even record it. Maybe that's why he had it.
Maybe.
Just like more practically for practical reasons. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you think there's something on the other? Do you think there's something more on the tape?
Possibility. It's a possibility, yeah. But as to your point about why Elliot was so clear on this memory, just like in general, I feel like people tend to repress negative emotions and negative energy. And it seems like exactly what you guys were saying earlier, Elliot didn't even remember Darlene was his sister. And that's because she was part of an aspect of his life that was so traumatic for him that your mind completely blacks out some moments if they're really, really, traumatic for you. So, but of course that wouldn't happen with more positive memories, which he seems to remember crystal clear. I think it's more of that, but I really I'm not sure.
I agree with that.
Okay, so the next scene is very, very interesting. So we're at Minister Zhang's home, I believe, and he is setting up the tree for Christmas. It's beautiful. He seems very at ease at home. And then Price comes to see him. And they have a little bit of back and forth banter for a little bit. And Price drops the bomb on him saying, I'm going to resign as CEO of E-Corp. And inevitably as well, I'm going to leave the Deus group. And Zhang is trying to keep his composure as usual and was like, that's absolutely unacceptable. And he's like, you can't. He's like, well, of course you're going to step down as CEO at some point, but not now while my project's being shipped to the Congo. We absolutely cannot do that or push that timeline up. And Philip Price essentially tells him, like, I really don't care. I don't care about your project. I don't care about your timeline. Like, I have nothing else left to lose. If you want to kill me, he's implying, like, if you want to kill me, but you need me as CEO. You can't have someone else just step in like that. So, you either do what I say or you don't. And Zhang gets really frustrated and says, like, really watch your loyalty now, which is very, very interesting because Mr. Robot, through Elliot, called that. He's like, I know you've been loyal to him. Use that to your advantage, which essentially Price takes that. He just goes for it. He's like, maybe this will work. We'll see. And it does. And Zhang plays the loyalty card, which of course Price claps back at him. He's like, I've been nothing but unswervingly loyal to you. He's like, and then Zhang tells him, he's like, I can't replace you can't have someone replace you as CEO unless every single member of the Deus group meets in person to vote on your successor. And Price was like, somehow, some way, something tells me that you'll figure it out. And he just kind of leaves it at that. And Zhang just will not have it. He's like, this is not how the game is supposed to be played. And Price tells him, like, well, you know what? At some point, a game has to end. And since you care so much about this game, you should be happy because you won. And that does not sit well with Zhang. He knows he's kind of lost that battle, and he knocks over his Christmas tree. What a great scene, though. It was really fantastic to see Price just kind of get the upper hand, even if it was just for like a little small thing.
I guess before Swetha and I comment, I'm curious, Harney, I guess you definitely loved the scene. What did you think about the content of what they were saying as far as the ramifications in the story? And I think the thing that Swetha and I struggled with, and I guess what I'm getting to, is we kind of struggled with why Zhang was so pissed, and we felt like this was a little bit weak story-wise as a reason to get everyone together. Okay. It just seemed like
it was convenient.
It was just like, who gives a shit?
Yeah, it seemed contrived, and it also seemed like Philip Price really didn't have any leverage in that moment.
Exactly.
And White Rose bent over backwards to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll get everyone together.
Yes and no. I mean, the way that I saw it, which is why I thought it was such a great scene, is it was like a first step element of like seeing Elliot and Price working together, and Price taking Elliot's advice and that working out in his benefit. And the reason why I think it was great is because Price forced White Rose's hand.
But why exactly? Like, why does White Rose care at all about Philip Price and his loyalty and his legacy or anything? Why does he care about that?
I don't think he cares about any of that. I think all he cares about is the project, and having Philip Price as CEO is crucial for him getting his project safely and properly to the Congo. And he says that in the dialogue that they have. He's like, I can't have you move the timeline up. I can't have you step down right now because that would disrupt relations with the Congo. That would disrupt my project being shipped. And which is why he was like, I need you as CEO. And that's why Price knew he had the leverage. It's like, you have two options. You either do what I say or you kill me. And you can't kill me because you need me. So you're going to now get the people together and do exactly what I need you to do. which is why I think it
Okay.
was like a perfect catch-22, where that's why he was so pissed, because he had his hand forced. He had to do what he say, because yeah, he can easily kill whoever he wants, but he can't kill Price in this weak timeline. It's very crucial that everything goes exactly right, and part of that going right is Price being and remaining CEO for at least this 1 week.
I think I agree with you on one point, the Congo aspect, because Zhang absolutely needed Price in order to allow the plan to go to the Congo. He's the one who smoothed out all the relations with the Congo, got the votes for the United States to make sure they, didn't vote in the United Nations about the Congo situation. So maybe, Philip Price is the only one who has that kind of political sway. So that one I can kind of see. I think the thing that we kind of struggled with was, why do you need to get everyone together to vote on a new CEO? Like, you have another puppet within E Corp who can make sure that the plant gets transferred in Tyrell Wellick. He could easily, you could just name him successor right now or whatever. I don't know. It just seemed a little contrived to like, oh, this is the reason why. Like, the only way we can move forward and replace you is if we get the whole group together. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
I didn't like that.
I understand that logic. And obviously, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that we like don't see, a lot of history we don't see on this day's group that we just got introduced to in the same episode. So, I mean, I think it's just like a small thing where Zhang has to, at some point, kind of keep superficial people happy on some sort of level, and maybe that's one of those things. There's like, we have to do things in a certain order for people to still like do what I say. I don't know. I agree though. It's not the best storytelling.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Okay. So the second to last scene is we're back at the funeral home, and Ellie gets a call from Price, and Price essentially tells him, "It's done. I've talked to him. I did it." And Elliot says, "Thank you," and Price says, "I'm not doing this for you." It's like, all right. And Darlene comes in and kind of confronts him. He's like, "Hey, I saw you on the subway. I saw you looking at your phone. I saw you multiple times throughout this day looking up Susan Jacobs. And why? Like, what's going on? Why are you doing this?" And eventually the truth comes out that Darlene was in fact responsible for her disappearance and implies her death. And this is kind of a really great scene because as Darlene is confessing, it's at church, and Elliot is right up by the cross, and he kind of looks like a god who Darlene is confessing her sins to. And promptly Elliot says, "Jesus fucking Christ." And it just kind of all goes down the drain from there. But yeah, I really love that scene. She's really, really worried about what her brother will think of her, and that's just like, I just want us to be okay. Like, things have just been so rocky. I just didn't know what you would think. But eventually they get back to a good place, and Elliot tells Darlene what he's up to, and Darlene wants in. And she tells him, like, like every hack or anything you've done, like you wouldn't have been able to do it without me or F Society. So let's just do it. I'm down. I want to take down White Rose as well. Let's do it together. And they kind of silently agree, like, yes, we're gonna do this moving forward together. And then Darlene brings up something very interesting towards the end of the conversation. She's like, "Man, like, no wonder, like, I thought you were acting like a total sketchball because, like, Vera came by and, like, totally freaked me out and blah, blah, blah." And you see his face immediately change. And he's like, "Vera, he has no idea." And she's like, "Yeah, like, I told you, like, a few weeks back, like, Vera came by the house, like, looking for you, and I thought maybe that's why you were, like, weirded out." And then she sees the look on Elliot's face, and she's like, "Should I be worried? Like, is there something I should be worried about?" And Elliot kind of, like, looks over to Mr. Robot, and, like, she, like, goes back in front of him. It's like, "Dude." And I was like, no, you're fine. Darlene exits the scene, and, of course, Elliot immediately confronts Mr. Robot. He's like, "What the hell, man? Like, I can't even trust you. Like, you didn't even tell me about Vera." And Mr. Robot, very convincingly, and I do believe he's telling the truth, he's like, "I did not, like, she did not tell me that. I swear to you, it was not me that she said, like, about Vera to." And Elliot is like, like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, if she didn't tell you, she definitely didn't tell me. So who the hell did she tell? Is there anything you want to say on the scene before I go to the end?
This scene is kind of like in tandem with the final scene. So the only thing I'll say is I loved the look that Elliot gave Mr. Robot. He's just like, "You motherfucker." But Mr. Robot had this look of like, oh shit. And at first I thought that look was, oh shit, I fucked up.
Hmm.
But I think obviously it's not that look. It was, oh shit, this is bad.
So then the next scene, it cuts to the small young version of Elliot in that same boardroom that we see in season 1 with all the like the big senior leadership of E Corp, including Wellick, meet and ask Elliot to come to way back when. So now it's the same boardroom, but it's just young Elliot, and out of those doors from the elevator comes Elliot's mom. And Elliot's mom essentially tells young Elliot, like, oh, that's where you were. It's like, that's not your seat. You need to, usually that's not your seat. We're saving it for when they are ready. And they're not ready yet. And small Elliot's like, who's they? Like, we're saving it for him. He's like, who's him? You mean Elliot? He's like, no. Like, Mr. Robot? No. And small Elliot doesn't say anything after that. He kind of, there's like an understanding that he knows who his mom is talking about, and he promptly gets out of the chair and walks towards his mom, and she takes his mom's hand and they leave. And that's where this
takes his mom's hand.
No, takes his mom's hand.
Yeah, nothing. Well, she does say, he says like, Mr. Robot, Elliot, and then she says, no, the other one.
The other one, yeah.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That was a crazy, crazy scene.
I have a ton of thoughts, but why don't you guys go first?
Swetha?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that at all. And I have a couple theories on who it could be. I was thinking that more than likely it was someone who had a big influence on Elliot as a child, because we see his parents when they're younger. We see Elliot when he's younger. And I think that those personalities all formed at the same time. And then I was thinking about, it's probably not a brand new character. I think it's someone that we've been introduced to in the past. And this doesn't really fit for me, but it could be like a young Philip Price from back in the day. The only reason I don't know, he would have had to have enough interactions with young Elliot to form this type of impression. But I do think that it could have been a personality that had a big impression on him as a child. And then I thought about the possibility of Wellick, but I agree with Siddha that that's been a very prevalent fan theory, and Sam Esmail came out and said that it's not likely to be true.
I mean, he didn't specifically say that, but he inadvertently said that by saying, oh, no one's come up with this theory yet. And Tyrelliot has been a very common theory.
And I also think why, Wellick certainly did not have an influence on young Elliot. And so that doesn't really fit. But we're actually, if I'm right in thinking it was an influence in Elliot's childhood, there's actually not that many people we've been introduced to that could play that role. So those are my initial thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, the mom clearly said him. So that rules out Angela. Another person could be of influence. So it's definitely a male. But go ahead, Harney.
But what was this, like, even beyond that, what was the scene? Like, was this happening in Elliot's head? Like, why this boardroom? Like, what? I didn't understand even, like, what was going on, It has to be going on inside Elliot's head, right?
Yeah, so it's definitely inside Elliot's head. And let's just assume, for the sake of argument, this is actually at E Corp.
Exactly.
Right?
So I feel like I think that's significant in terms of, and what if it's even someone that was at that table when Elliot first came? Who was sitting in that seat? It was Tyrell. But like Swetha said, I don't think that they had a lot of interaction where it makes sense that it would be him. And like you said, it seems like it's someone like his age or someone like his height that he was looking at. This is my crackpot theory. But I'm wondering if it was White Rose that he's been seeing. Mr. Zhang, when he was younger or something like that. Because he was someone that potentially he could have crossed paths with. He was essentially Elliot's dad's boss, Angela's mom's boss. They could have been working together when it was a smaller company and then grew out. Definitely a possibility, but like Swetha said, there's not a lot of people, to be honest, that it could be. So that's That's where it gets a little confusing.
One thing I don't like is the possibility of it being the audience, where we're clearly someone that Elliot talks to, we're his friend, we're his confidant. But I
don't like
really
that theory.
No, I don't like
No?
it so much. Well, there's a
Really?
couple things that don't fit so well.
Okay.
Where, you know, clearly this scene where Darlene talks to Elliot about Vera, were we the ones that kind of came through and we were dominant and talked to Darlene without Elliot's knowing? I don't know. Some things just don't fit for that.
I mean, just to be devil's advocate, in this particular moment, this time in his life, potentially, yeah, because Elliot's not talking to us right now. So we might be stronger in terms of having our own persona. It might be, this is totally just like out of my ass, I don't know. But it might be a thing where it could be that we have a stronger persona now. Or we're wanting to have a stronger persona because Elliot is not sharing things with us. We're trying to get more information about what's going on. Potentially. I don't hate that idea. I think that's actually very clever, but I can kind of see what you mean. Like it might be a cop-out.
I don't know if it's a cop-out. It's just there's some physical limitations. Elliot has always called us the silent observer. He has asked us for help, and he gets frustrated when we don't provide help. But this show has a penchant for breaking the fourth wall and using us. The most obvious one was that time that Elliot had to interact with, God, what's Wellick's wife's name?
Joanna?
Had to interact with Joanna's bodyguard. He was like having like a moment with Elliot, and Elliot's like, fucking A, I don't want to deal with this. And he's like, can you find something in my room that looks different? Can you help me? What do you see? And so
and the camera
that was
moved.
What was that?
The camera didn't move as if we were moving.
As if we were, moving our eyes around the room. So that was a way where we were actually taking control in a way. But I agree with Swetha. I'm not sure if that's going to work. And I do think it's an actual character. Well, technically we are a character in the show. We are the missing character. But I don't know if we are the missing character that Magda, his mom, is referring to. So a couple things. Magda says, you shouldn't be sitting there. That's not your chair. And young Elliot responds, and I turned the subtitles to figure this out. He says, why? I thought, and he's cut off. What was he going to say? I thought what? I thought it's okay to sit here?
Me.
It's for me? Yeah. So I thought it was like, it's okay for me to sit here. It's my time. So that's when I took like, is eventually young Elliot supposed to take over? And I view young Elliot as his innocence. It's when, before he starts seeing shit, before he started questioning reality. Is that Elliot's ultimate goal, to get back to that point where he trusts himself again? There are 4 chairs in the room, so that has to represent the 4 personalities of Elliot. And I don't think that includes Elliot. I think it's Mr. Robot, young Elliot, Magda, and then this 4th personality. But I do think the ultimate goal is that Elliot sits at that table with them eventually. I think that's what they want, some kind of form of unification. She also says they're not ready yet. Who is they?
I think Elliot and Mr. Robot.
I don't know if it's that, because she then goes on to say, that's not your chair. We're still waiting for him. So they and him are 2 different people. And then he goes, Elliot, Mr. Robot. And he says, no, the other one.
But that's exactly what Swetha's saying. Like when she's saying they are not ready and him, those are 2 different people, right? So they could still meet Elliot and Mr. Robot, and him is that 3rd persona that we don't know.
Okay.
I think
maybe.
Elliot hasn't come to grips with this 4th personality, and so she's just saying like he's not ready yet, essentially.
Okay, that could be a possibility. How are we able to see that last scene? It's clearly inside Elliot's head. We are the silent observer. Yet we are able to see a scene inside Elliot's head that does not involve Mr. Robot or Elliot. We have never ever seen a scene where it's just his mother and a young Elliot. Every single time we've seen this fictitious version or this personality version of Elliot's mom, it's always been with a young Elliot and Mr. Robot. Always. This is the only time that neither of them were present. How is that possible?
Actually, now that you're saying it, I don't think that the 3rd persona is going to be us as audience. because Sam Maxwell's clearly labeling like a gender to this person, and that doesn't necessarily mean like I don't think that would make sense as an audience. Like it's just a him. It could be anybody, you know. So I think
Correct.
there's a specific person he has in mind. It makes most sense to me that it's Wellick, but maybe the person that Elliot was talking to when he was younger was like his younger self, and maybe he was through each stage of his life he was shuffling through each different persona. Like each persona had a different role to play in each part of his life, and maybe this is like the final stage, which is why like they're waiting on him or this person.
I like that, and that's what my theory is. I actually think that the other one is actually a version of Elliot.
I think so too.
I think it's maybe like a dark version of Elliot, a more brazen version, just an aspect of Elliot. But I think it is Elliot, but he doesn't like to be called Elliot.
I just don't know why the mom would be like, it's not Elliot, you know?
Yeah, I think when they refer to Elliot, they're talking about Elliot Prime, the dominant, the main personality. And maybe this other person goes by a different name. This person could be Mr. Robot. And when I say Mr. Robot,
the real one.
The real one. Because when the Mr. Robot that we're familiar with is interacting with Krista, she says, "What should I call you?" And he says, "What is he calling me?" And she says, "Mr. Robot." And he kind of scoffs at that name. Mm-hmm. So maybe there's... I was telling this to Swetha before we started podcasting, and it's kind of alluding to what you were saying, Ernie. I do think that person that watched Ellie's father die was this other personality, the fourth personality. I think that person went and watched the movie. I also think he was involved in Elliot jumping out the window in some capacity. He was there at that moment, maybe was created at that moment. I also think that he could have been the person that put the mask on, put on the Mr. Robot jacket when he was interacting with Darlene on Halloween, and came up with the F Society plan. That could have been the fourth personality. We've always assumed it was Mr. Robot that we're familiar with, but what if it was the real, legit Mr. Robot who came up with that plan and wanted to go through with it? There's also one scene that no one really talks about. It's the scene that we've never seen, but Elliot's only talked about. And it's during that Halloween night when he was saying to Darlene, I was court ordered to see a therapist because when they locked me in the server room, I went crazy. Like the next thing I woke up and I had destroyed the entire server room. That doesn't sound like Mr. Robot. That could be this fourth personality that's a little bit more violent, a little bit more chaotic.
Mm-hmm. I guess my question to you guys now is, do you think that Mr. Robot, like as we know him now, Mr. Robot knows about this fourth persona?
That was the next thing I was going to say. I think he does. When he's saying to Elliot, if you look at his reaction, Elliot's looking very scared and confused. Mr. Robot is looking very defiant. It was not me. And I think he knows it was not Elliot. But I think he knows who it was. And that's going back to when I said, Elliot looks at him and says, "Motherfucker," the look he gives him. And Mr. Robot has like this "oh shit" look. I think it's more like, "oh shit, did the other one take over?" And I think he's worried about that.
No, but like, why would they hide that from him? I just like don't understand that part. Like, because
who's they?
Yet?
I do think that Magda and Mr. Robot probably have similar access to this personality. So I agree with you, so that Mr. Robot must know about this fourth personality, because I think they're on the same level.
Yeah.
I think they haven't told him essentially because of what we talked about earlier. They actually don't feel like he's ready yet.
But why is that such a big deal, I guess? Like, clearly this is a person or like a big reveal that they waited till like the very last season to happen.
Yeah.
But what's the power of that statement? Like, why does it mean so much?
That's a great question.
What if it's like almost an evil or very violent version of Elliot?
I don't know. Why would the show do that, though? It seems like a weird place to take the show.
Because it's something to protect Elliot from.
But why? Like, we're at the end. Like, it would make more sense to introduce that early. Like, to be honest, like, when I saw this scene, I didn't like it. I was like, I think this is too late in the game to introduce something so big like this and to unpack it in this season. Don't know where they're going to go with that. And as we talk about it more, I do think more and more that it's probably more of like a more destructive version of Elliot himself, kind of like a even darker alter ego of himself. And it's like, why would they want to do that to Elliot? Kind of make him into like a darker character.
I guess that does fit working with Vera.
Yeah, so that was another thing I was going to say. I have a theory that this fourth personality has actually been interacting with Vera over the past few months.
Totally.
Because it makes zero sense that Vera would show up with his sole goal to interact and see Elliot and then just disappears. I don't buy that. I don't buy that at all. Knowing Vera, he would not leave without talking to Elliot, and he didn't talk to Mr. Robot. He didn't talk to the Elliot that we know. He talks to this fourth personality, and I would not be surprised if they have been working together.
Did you guys watch the preview for next episode?
We did, but it was like 20 seconds. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I just had a comment on that if you want to talk about it. The very first scene is of Vera, and he says something to the effect of, like, I don't want Elliot to be my prisoner, I want him to be my partner.
Yeah,
and he's
exactly.
talking to somebody.
Yeah.
But I don't know who. It could be Mr. Robot, like, kind of interrogating him. I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thing.
I mean, damn, so many questions. Yeah, so after this reveal, like, it's shit. I was like, fuck, do I need to rewatch all the 3 seasons again to find details?
That's what I feel like too.
And Sam Esmail basically said that when he was in his interview. He said, yeah, you should rewatch it because there's a lot of clues. And that was like his intent. He wanted the show to be highly replayable. And so this is something maybe it doesn't work. I thought it was very interesting that the final scene, everything was centered, the framing wise. And Sam Esmail is always having characters off into he breaks them to thirds. They're off to the side. They're never in the middle. And is that to signify that there's another personality there? There's another observer? I don't know. I need to go back and see scenes where Elliot's not involved and see if the characters are censored. I think it doesn't work. I think Angela had scenes where she's off center, but I don't know. I do think the key details are in the first season, probably even in the first episode, because I think it's important for Sam Esmail to establish the boundaries and the rules for how the show works. And it's better to do that from the beginning. And he said from the very get-go, everything was there.
That's nuts.
And so, again, I think I talked about this. I think we need more information about the time that Ellie jumped out the window, because I really think this fourth personality was instrumental at that point.
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think season 2 we get a flashback of that scene, right? Or not?
We get a flashback, but Elliot's already on the ground, knocked out. And you hear his parents arguing upstairs, and then the next scene is him at the hospital.
Okay.
And he's like very like dead. He's like just like not interacting with anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And just a couple other questions that came up as I was starting to think more about this. Why are Elliot's memories of his father incorrect? We've seen a bunch of these flashbacks, and he looks like a great dad, but when he talks about his father, it's not always in the best terms. He doesn't put his father in the best light. I never understood that.
Yeah.
Who erased Elliot's memories of his sister and his father and F Society all the way back from season 1? Could that be this fourth personality trying to protect Elliot in a way or keep things from Elliot? Because Mr. Robot seems to always want to work with Elliot. It doesn't seem like it's in his nature to erase Elliot's memories in certain ways.
That makes me think, is Mr. Robot trying to protect Elliot from knowing this fourth persona, and the mom and little Elliot is trying to introduce that persona? Like, are they kind of battling back and forth to against each other? Or do you think they all have a congruent or similar goal where they do want Elliot to know this fourth persona, is just not the right time?
It's kind of a similar thought to the last thing you said. What if Mr. Robot and I guess Magda and young Elliot actually work for this fourth personality and actually do his bidding?
Would you hate it if it was like White Rose?
I don't think it would make sense if it was White Rose. I don't think it would make sense if it's any character that didn't have some impact on how Elliot grew up and how he was formed. Because you look at the people that are the other 3 personalities: his father, his mother, and a younger version of himself. I mean, Wellick has no impact on who Elliot is. Philip Price has no impact on who he is, and neither does White Rose. It's just they all met him afterwards. I mean, White Rose, I guess, through the project and his father, I guess maybe, but I wouldn't like that. I wouldn't like that at all.
Dude, you know what's always been weird is Darlene is never in that picture. Like, she's not a persona. It's not a person. It's not a person he sees. He completely forgets about her, in fact. And I think, if I recall correctly, there's a family picture of them, and Darlene's not in that picture.
Yeah, it's just him and his mom, I think.
It's just the three of them.
Oh.
Mom, Dad, and Elliot. She's never in the picture, and like, I almost, if I didn't have more concrete evidence to the contrary, I would almost say that she was never there. But we know that can't be true. But that does, I'm still confused on that point. Like, why is she never like a big impact on his life enough to like be seeing her? Is it because she's still so much like very real in his life?
Yeah, that's, as you said that, I was thinking about that. I was like, what's another common trait all three of those characters have? You could argue they're all dead.
Yeah.
His father's dead, his mother's dead, and maybe that younger version of Elliot is dead also in Elliot's eyes.
Yeah.
Like his innocence is dead, the moment that he jumped out the window or something.
Right.
I touched on this earlier, but the only person's memories we can really trust about the past are Darlene's, and I think that's actually going to prove instrumental to really figuring out what's going on. Mm-hmm. Another thing, this is a small detail. In season 1, when Mr. Robot and Elliot first interact, and obviously Elliot does not know who Mr. Robot is, doesn't know he's his father, and doesn't know that he's not real, and they're talking to each other in the subway station on the bench. Mr. Robot starts talking about his father, and he talks about how his father was a thief. And I've always thought that story was strange. Why did he tell that story? And why did he frame it in that way, talking about his father being a thief? Clearly does not have a father. And just, I don't know, everything about that just always bothered me. And I don't think it's something that Sam Esmail just throw in for nothing.
Remind me of that story again and the context of that.
So Elliot notices Mr. Robot on the subway, and he notices this is the same guy that's been kind of following him everywhere. And that's right before he takes him to, the Ferris wheel and F Society, and introduces him to everyone. And then I guess as he's trying to like recruit him, he tells him this story about how his father was a thief and kind of thought of himself, I think if I'm remembering correctly, as kind of like a Robin Hood, where he would steal from the powerful, and he justified what he was doing. But then he I guess he died, or he went to prison or something.
Like he got caught, and he was just like a fool.
Exactly. That's exactly what he said. I just thought that story was strange, and I wonder if there's actually something important about that story.
Oh, definitely. Now that you bring it up, I mean, that tells me that Elliot's dad knew a lot more about what the plant was, what the project was.
But that wasn't Elliot's dad that was saying that.
What do you mean?
This was Mr. Robot. That's what
saying that about Elliot's dad?
Well, that's why I get confused. Mr. Robot's talking about his father.
Oh.
And so I always got confused, like, wait, he doesn't have a father because he's not real. Who is he talking about? And did he just make this up for the sake of making it up? Why? Why would he do that as a way of recruiting Elliot?
The only thing I can think of is that's probably how actual Elliot thinks of his dad, and it was a way of finding common ground with Elliot to get him to come with him.
Could be true, yeah.
But as you were saying that story, I don't think this is true, but I was like, what if Elliot's dad is not who we think it is? It's not Mr. Robot, it's someone else. And we just have been labeling the Mr. Robot that we see as his dad. The only thing that counteracts that point is when Elliot's looking through the file at the end of season 1, I think, and sees all the pictures of him and his dad when he was younger. Again, can't trust Elliot's mind. It totally could be just, him showing us what he wants us to see. But I don't think so, because even in flashbacks where it has nothing to do with Elliot, supposedly we see Angela Moss at Angela's mom's birthday party, and Elliot's dad is there, who we see as Mr. Robot.
And that was Angela's memory, right?
Yeah. So I don't think so, but there's still a possibility. I don't know. Like, there's really not that many people it can be.
Yeah, and I don't think it's a new character. I think it's someone we've seen, or maybe a version of someone we've seen.
So you're sticking to that it's just a different version of Elliot.
I think so. I think we have seen him. I think he was at the theater. I think he was there when Elliot got jumped out the window. I think he was there. I think, and this is a little bit of a stretch, I think he was the one that came up with the 5'9" hack in F Society the night that he put the mask on and the Mr. Robot jacket. I don't think that was the Mr. Robot that we're familiar with.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just so many questions, man. Sam Esmail, just...
I was not expecting that. That was a huge bomb dropped. Wow.
At first, I didn't know how to react, but I love it. I don't know if you still are like, I don't know how to feel about this, or you're like warming up to it now because of the possibilities, or...
I think my only worry is he going to be able to pull this off? Because like you said, like just small things about the getting all the Deus group back together seems a little bit contrived. I don't want this to feel like that either. Like he just wants to add in this one plot twist just for like a wow factor, you know? I'm a little bit worried that it could be that, but I have faith in him that he can really pull this off, and it could be an awesome story point, but I don't know.
Yeah, I have faith in Sam Esmail. I know he can pull it off. I believe he will pull it off, but he actually has the same concerns. He said that in his interview, that he's a little scared because this is such a big thing, and he's been
It's a huge risk.
hiding it for so long, and no one has guessed it. And so to like pull off the Band-Aid and reveal this, he's a little nervous because like he's got to bring it home. But at the same time, he feels confident about it because he has set it up from the beginning. And so he has a good foundation, his opinion, and now he's just showing it to us, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, hats off to the cast and crew for keeping a lot of secrets from the season, especially, I didn't even think about it till now, but Angela Moss dying in the first episode, that's a huge thing to keep from people, to keep quiet for a long time. So I can't even imagine what else they have that are secrets that we don't know about yet. So,
do you think Christian Slater and Rami Malek knew from the beginning that there was a third personality?
I think so.
I think so too. I think he gave it to them, and maybe little details in their acting helped kind of guide it a little bit.
I think for that reason, I think they had to know.
Yeah.
That's very, very interesting. Now I feel like I need to rewatch.
I know, man. Now we just rewatched season 1, 2, and 3. Now it's like shit. I gotta view it with a completely different set of eyes.
Well, since you did do a recent rewatch, did you, now knowing this information, looking back, have you caught anything or realized anything?
Like I said, some of the questions I brought up: who hacked Elliot's memories? Some of the scenes, some of the stuff where Elliot's talking about his past, does it line up? There's another scene I didn't talk about. When Elliot's talking to Krista, and he talks about his father dying, and Krista's like, "Whoa, what the fuck? You never told me that." And he was dead certain that he did.
Not about his father dying, about him falling out the window, right? Oh, no, you're right. At the movie theater.
No, actually, you're right. You're right. About his father pushing him out the window.
Oh, correct, yeah.
It was in regards to Kevin McAllister, the snowman.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, "You never told me that." And he's like, "Oh, I'm certain I did." He was like dead certain that he did. Another thing, I always thought was strange, the scene in season 3 where Elliot and Mr. Robot are kind of like skitzing out, where Elliot's in the bathroom and he sees Mr. Robot talking to Cisco, and he's kind of like, "What the fuck was that?" And then Mr. Robot's like, "I don't feel good, something's off." You know, I think like we initially went with, oh, Mr. Robot was fucking with him, but I never really bought that because it didn't make any sense to me, because they were actually working together at that point. It didn't make any sense to me for Mr. Robot to kind of mess with Elliot.
Yeah.
So maybe that's like the fourth personality was interjecting and trying to assert dominance. I don't know.
Yeah.
So there's like little details there that may explain about this this fourth personality.
No, definitely. I'm really interested to see how this plays out.
Me too, man. Me too. So I think that kind of wraps it up for this one. So I think we might podcast on a new HBO series, Watchmen, maybe?
Yep, definitely.
That should be fun. It's a new Damon Lindelof show. We will always subscribe to every Damon Lindelof show. We're a believer in him from our Lost days.
Yeah.
That's how we first You got the podcasting bug.
Yep, definitely.
Cool.
All right.
Anything else?
No, I think that was it. Just super excited. Really good, really good episodes.
All right. Thanks for listening, guys. This is Sid.
This is Harini.
And Swetha's asleep. And we'll talk to you guys soon.